Welcome, everybody. We are here today with Overwolf and the Tracker Network. And today we're going to be talking about Overwolf's framework for enabling their creator community to build in-game apps and, more recently, game mods. So a few stats: 10 million daily app engagements and 180 million game sessions in the last month. And even further, top creators on Overwolf have earned over $1.2 million per year. So with us to talk about all this stuff and more is Uri Marchand, the CEO of Overwolf, and Matt Hawkins, the CEO of Tracker Network and Overwolf creator. And more specifically, today we will be talking about one, an overview of the market for in-game apps and game mods. Two, what is Overwolf and the story behind their company, which is actually a really fascinating story. Three, what's it like to be an in-game creator? And four, the expansion of Overwolf via the acquisition of CurseForge from Twitch. So welcome, guys. And maybe we could just start by having a brief introduction in terms of your background. Maybe start with you, Uri.
Sure. First, very happy to be here. So I'm 40 years old, married, have 4 kids. Basically started my professional career in the Israeli Air Force. I was a helicopter pilot. I flew CH-53s and have done that for something like 7 years. I then left the Army, studied computer science, and while doing that, had my first bootstrap startup in e-learning. And after graduating from computer science, I basically started Overwolf. Been playing games ever since I was 6. Favorite genre is RTSs, and now MOBA.
Yeah, I'm the owner of Tracker Network. Started it in officially about 2015, unofficially as a hobby around 2010. Had a long career of being a programmer, developer, software, out in the consulting world, doing all kinds of that. Finally, in 2015, things started to kind of get going pretty good for the sites and such. So moved to full time and been doing that since then. So things are going great.
Awesome. So maybe we could just go ahead and dive right in, but I thought it'd be great to first just start with an overview in terms of the market for in-game apps and game mods. So could you guys talk to us about, for the people in the audience who don't understand this market, what are examples of applications or programs in this market, and what's the general size of this market that we're talking about?
Sure. Matt, you want to take that? Should I?
You go first.
I go first. All right. So first, I think apps, mods, websites, or community creations around games have existed pretty much since games started. In UGC, I think there's the bright side and dark side. Dark side of UGC is cheats and these type of things that eventually hurt the economy. And the bright side are community creations that actually either help make the games a little bit better, the experience is more interesting, or help players in general. I think when a game developer ships a game, after a very, very long creative process, and if the game takes off, there's going to be a lot of fans that would want to play this game, whether it's an established developer or non-established developer. And at that point, they're probably going to be really, really busy with polishing the gameplay experience and adding more content and listening to what the community has to say and then iterating on what the community has to say. But what if there was a force in parallel of a lot of fans who are really passionate for the game that could enhance the games in many ways? This has been existing for a long time, but up until now, there wasn't a company that said, hey, we want to solve all these problems for creators, and this is what we're trying to do. In terms of the market size, it's really hard to estimate because I think no one really measures it. If you're trying to look at engagement metrics, that you would see huge numbers of downloads from, for example, the mod portals, whether that's ModDB or Steam Workshop or Nexus Mods or CurseForge. It's in the billions, right? So just CurseForge, for example, has a couple billion mod downloads per year. With, I think, similar numbers on Workshop and Nexus Mods. So in terms of the sheer engagement metrics, I feel like it's very big. In terms of how well it monetizes, that's a lot smaller. And I think this is an industry that we're building right now. I think in terms of use cases, there are many, many different use cases in modding and apps and websites. With competitive games, one of the most popular ones is I want to get stats, or I want to be better as a gamer. And I want to have this single source that's going to provide me the information that I need to play better and to track my performance. You know, if you compare it to running, for example, then there's Garmin and there's a lot of running apps. It would be kind of similar with competitive games. With single-player games, for example, Skyrim, modding there would be mostly around either creating a new version of the game or changing cosmetics in a way that just creates a bit of a different experience, just like a DLC. And there are World of Warcraft add-ons, and there are more types of UGC that could be created around the game experience. So I think this is, Matt, would you agree? I think this is in high level how we'd look at this. From a dollar standpoint, I think it's really, really hard to estimate what's that worth right now, because I feel like we're in the process of building it.
And then Matt, for you, like you're more on the in-game app side. And so for you, your audience, is that mainly competitive players or people who are trying to, just get better in terms of their gameplay?
Well, that's certainly who we target. So it's kind of biased for us. It's definitely who we go after. That's kind of what our mindset is as well. So different games have different engagement levels on that kind of thing. Some games just aren't inherently as competitive. So, yeah, we're targeting the competitive people in the competitive games, and platforms like Overwolf has allowed us to kind of do more real-time type engagements with those players, whereas our stat sites are kind of like after the game is over, after you've closed the game, you can kind of review what you've done. So that's definitely what we're targeting. Yeah.
And then in terms of like the monetization model, is it like a subscription to stats, or is it like just a purchase for a tool, or what does that generally look like?
So we're mostly just ad revenue right now. So
Okay.
Both in our Overwolf apps and our websites.
Got it.
It's complicated. It's difficult to do, difficult to monetize, especially with the new things that are changing with privacy and ad block and stuff like that. So we're trying to find other ways to monetize, but it's definitely a constant challenge to do that. But right now we're mostly relying on ad revenue.
Right. And is that something that Overwolf helps with in terms of the ad infrastructure to enable that stuff?
Yep. So what we do, and I think this is the first bite of monetization solutions. So I think we look at problems at large, and then we try and tackle them for creators. And we think the basic thing for monetization is to have an ad solution that for a creator would be super easy to implement in their app in JavaScript. They would choose if to implement ads and where on their app they want to implement the ads. And we do experience curation to make sure that they're not putting it in a place that's not reasonable or that's going to affect the game experience and all that. And this is how it works from the ad side. We have an ad ops team in the company, and we're plugged into SSPs. There's a company that sells us directly. It's called Playwire. So it's mostly Playwire plus programmatic to serve these ads. We just recently added subscriptions. So if a creator wants to turn on subscriptions, they can do that either for turning off ads or adding extra feature or anything in between. We'll be adding soon donations, and we're also exploring other interesting models around monetization. For example, there's a company, Scooty, that have recently announced that they're providing an in-game e-commerce solution to provide you with an e-commerce experience for the stuff you may want to buy inside the game if you want to reward the creator. So if there's something that you wanted to buy anyway, you could support a creator through buying your either Nike shoes or whatever else through their app. And that would be another way to reward a creator. So this is where we are right now. I think ads are, first, nobody likes ads. But I think the advantage of having that solution allows apps to go through the journey from creation to quality. And this is why I think for creator economies at large, ads are important. I think it's important in products like YouTube or TikTok. And it's also important in Overwolf because it allows you to start something off, release an MVP, make something for yourself so that you can see the longer term potential. And then eventually you can really make a living off of it.
Right.
So
And if we were to look at like the in-game apps market versus the game mods, what are the top games to build for?
So I think in apps, first, I think top games to build for correlate with popularity and the approach of the game publisher or game developer. So if a game is really, really popular, say like League of Legends, and the company really stands behind creators, with DevRel department and with APIs, then there's going to be a lot of content, and there's also a lot of potential because there are a lot of fans out there that would want to play. There are really, really popular games that don't invest as much in the creator community. So it's a little bit harder to create content for these games, but still, you could be successful creating either an app or a mod for a game, even if the game developer does not invest a ton of resources on supporting the creator community. Where you're probably going to fail is with games, that don't take off. Even if they're heavily invested in mods, there's just not enough people playing those games. So there's probably, not a huge opportunity to make a living off of creating an ancillary service.
Matt, for you, is there a specific game you wish they would enable API access to or some sort of access to
yeah, the biggest one we're trying right now is like Apex Legends. So, Tracker Network's kind of running at you with a big old hugging hands. And some of these developers want the hug and some of them are running away from us. So I don't really understand why you would, but yeah, that's the big one right now that we're trying to get legitimate access to for an API.
Right. And maybe one other question I can ask you, Matt, is like when you're making the decision in terms of building sort of the in-game stuff, web versus app, what is there any specific, like how do you think about that differentiation in terms of like delivering whatever the information or delivering experience to users on both of those platforms?
We usually start with data, I guess. Okay. So what data can we get for this game? And usually the data that we can get outside on the website versus the data that Overwolf provides is usually different. Okay. So not only can we do unique real-time features on the Overwolf app, but we can also then bring in those APIs that we're using on the website to add even more additional functionality to the app. So we always start with data. What can we make for this game that's going to be valuable to players and help them improve their game?
Got it. Okay. So I thought we could now shift and talk a little bit more about Overwolf and, not only the story behind the company, but in terms of the product itself, can you, for the audience who aren't familiar with this space, so, what does Overwolf do and how are in-game apps developed using the Overwolf framework?
Overwolf apps are single-page web apps. Creators use HTML and JavaScript and just HTML and JavaScript to create a desktop app that would then work inside the game. So I'm sure some people are aware of Electron, and Overwolf is kind of similar to Electron, but made for gaming. So if Electron is Chromium, basically taking the Chrome engine and making it really easy to create desktop apps with HTML and JavaScript, Overwolf is also based on Chromium, and it makes it easy to create desktop apps that would then work inside the game. Apart from creating a desktop app, we provide all of the services that you need as a service through APIs. So for example, you want to be able to get your own installer and your desktop icon and to be able to hit WinKey and to launch the app. You want to be able to have an interactive in-game overlay that supports every game so that if the app wants to interact with the gamer while they're playing, you want to be able to do that. Another big thing that we're providing is real-time telemetry. So the ability, if you're playing a specific game, to know which game that is, which champion, your location on the map, your roster, the people that you're playing with, your weapon currently, if you just gave damage, took damage, you killed someone, you died. All those events are really hard to understand, and we have over years built the capability to get those things in real time without having an impact on the game experience. So essentially, an app creator can create whatever they want inside the game because they have access to both presenting UI and the information. And we curate that it makes sense with the policies of the game, and that it doesn't provide an unfair advantage. More things that we provide are, for example, capture APIs. So if you wanted to capture a quick clip or a replay, and there are, I want to say, something like 4 or 5 different third-party companies creating all sorts of permutations on highlights services. We also, through our framework, provide monetization, as I mentioned previously, debug tools, analytics, so behavior analytics for your product. So you go to your author dashboard, and you can see things like how many downloads and retention and how much money you made and crash rates and crash reports. We just recently added the ability to get more granular information around crashes. And basically everything authors need to build something that would then work inside the game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So how much technical proficiency for an aspiring in-game app creator out there? What sort of programming language? What is sort of the technical bar in order to start building using Overwolf?
I would say it's relatively low, but it's for people who understand software development. So you have to be pretty good at HTML and JavaScript, but that's it.
Okay.
So if you know how to create a website or a landing page, you could easily build an Overwolf app. And for example, I know that in computer classes in high schools and even junior high, those are the type of things that they learn in Israel. And we even have a conversation right now with a few high schools to get Overwolf into their learning program so that they can, instead of just creating a website, they can create an app for something that they're passionate about, because a lot of people play games here.
Great. And so that's where you guys are today. But I actually, just reading on the story of Overwolf on your website, I thought that was fascinating. So maybe we could also just get you to kind of give us a overview in terms of how you got here to the current product and from where you started, which again, I personally thought was really fascinating.
Sure. So we started in 2010, finished studying computer science, did an entrepreneurship program in my 4th year, and I felt like there's an opportunity to build a product that would add features that I was missing as a gamer. So the vision behind the company, with our seed funding, we got $100,000 from Yossi Bardi. He's one of the big angel investors here. It seemed to us back then like a lot of money. Apparently it was not, but the thesis behind the company back then is we're just going to create this product that's going to be like a Swiss Army knife with a bunch of features. First one we had was Skype integration. We had a browser that worked inside the game. We had video capture and a bunch of other features. It took us about a year and 9 months to ship the first version of the product. That was quite mediocre. I think back then we had the tendency to try and capture more than we can actually execute on. As young, inexperienced entrepreneurs, we thought that scope matters, and we now know that quality matters. And we thought that people like Swiss Army knives, and actually nobody likes Swiss Army knives, especially if it's a software product. Maybe people like the knife itself, but not as a software product. At that point, what we were able to achieve technically got on a lot of people's radar. And we started having all sorts of conversations of, hey, why don't you guys build this? Or why don't you guys build that? And to these conversations, we thought, oh, this is cool. So we then pivoted and did that. Or this was another interesting idea, so we did that as well. So what we ended up having is this collection of unpolished apps that really took us nowhere. And I think the peak was a conversation that we've had with Microsoft back then around building a touch controller for a Windows tablet. So back then, iPads were huge, and there was an opportunity around building a Windows tablet. This was the nature of the conversation with Microsoft. And our mission was to create a touch controller that makes PC games that were written for a mouse and keyboard that would make them playable on a touch device. So using our tech, overlay capabilities, input handling, and all those things, we were able to really get it done. But that was a super expensive pivot from which nothing came out. So after a long time of pivoting between a million ideas and really not succeeding and running out of money in 2013, we were in a place where we had to ask ourselves some tough questions. And trying to understand what works and see if we can play on our strengths. So what we knew works is that people play games, and gaming is just going to keep on growing. So there's no doubt about that. The second thing we noticed is people keep on coming to us with requests and, do this, do that, both users and big companies. And then the third thing we've learned is that we just cannot do everything ourselves. So we thought that the best way to sort of fulfill our mission as a company is to, instead of trying to build everything ourselves, let's just focus on building a framework and then allow third-party creators to build content. That could be game specific, could be generic across games. And this is when we started this journey. And our big challenge then was that we had to both build the chicken and the egg at the same time. Because, when we worked on this pivot, we've raised 5 million as our A round. And after a year, we finished the framework. So you could develop apps. What ended up happening is nobody wanted to develop apps because we didn't have any traction. So we had to work hard on explaining the advantages that you could benefit from building an app on Overwolf and what we bring to the table. Through that, get to the place where folks create apps. Through that, grow a little bit, and then the cycle started happening. So this is it in general. I think the big thing for us was the pivot to an open framework. The obsessive sort of focus on, hey, we're just going to do a framework and we're not going to do things on the side. And this would help us get to where we are today.
And what was the thinking behind when you decided to go, the framework only? Like, how did you know that was the right decision, or what led you guys to believe that was the right thing to do?
So, back then we didn't know, we just felt that there's enough evidence that it might work. The evidence was in the form of just either user requests or business requests for more use cases. The second evidence is that people play games and they're just going to keep on playing more games. And the third one is that we felt like we were really good in infrastructure, but the culture we had back then, and that's a little bit different, but the culture we had back then was of, constantly, hey, we got to solve every use case and we got to build it in-house. And, looking back, that's a very naive way of thinking, I think, when you're building software products. And it's all about quality, it's not about scope. And by definition, you're not going to be able to build all these use cases. And as a confused young entrepreneur, if you're saying yes to everybody, you're doing something wrong. But the framework allows us to contribute, to all these different use cases. So this is why we felt it's going to work. But we did have a lot of question marks back then.
Right. And then what was the point, or what marked the point at which you guys got traction? You're able to convince guys like Matt to start building with Overwolf. How did that happen in terms of getting that initial traction?
So I think before we started working with you, Matt, and correct me if I'm wrong, we already had a couple of use cases. One was an app for Hearthstone called Hearth Arena that helped drafting. The app itself, prior to having an app, the creator had a website, and just the experience of tabbing out of the game, inserting the name of the cards that are currently on the screen for drafting, and then updating the website, what you chose, was super cumbersome. And for the first time through the app, we were able to the creator was able to kind of make it as if it was a feature inside the game. So I think that use case, as well as a couple other use cases, is potentially what got on Matt's radar. And also with Matt, I think he was one of our first partners. You were one of our first partners, and the journey has been interesting, right? We started with Rocket League. That didn't necessarily work as best as we wanted. Then we tried to, bite more than we could chew, I think, with Fortnite. But then we had some nice successes, and I think now we figured out how we scale this together.
And Matt, how did you first hear about them? Was it like some forum link somewhere, or did they reach out to you directly based on another product you had made, or how did that happen?
They actually reached out to me on Twitter and just asked me, they kind of showed me what they were doing and asked if we were interested in looking into it. I think that kind of before me, they were focusing on different games like the Hearth Arena, some of the MOBAs and stuff, which is not my department really. I'm more of the shooters and stuff. except for Rocket League, obviously. But, once they reached out to me, which a lot of people reach out to us for different things, but for some reason, like I was really intrigued by the in-game aspect of the apps, because that's something that we've been trying to do for a long time, is to not just have someone visit a page and then leave, to actually have engagement with them, keep showing them information that they can use. So it didn't take long for me to be convinced that this was something that we wanted to look into further, and so we built out our first Rocket League app with them. And yeah, it was a challenge, and there was a lot of hurdles, but when it was done, we could immediately see the value. We started seeing installs and stuff, and the feedback on Twitter and stuff. So it was clear to me that we need to continue to iterate on that and to look for more opportunities.
And Uri, was that the initial marketing strategy? Basically, Twitter DMs? Was that more than that, or was that
whatever medium that would work? Twitter, emails, pigeons, anything that we could use to communicate with creators, because we were in a place where nobody knew about us. We felt like we were ready. In retrospective, I can tell you right now that we weren't ready, but we felt like we were ready, because you can build an app, so everything's going to work. Right now, we're a lot smarter, in the framework itself is a lot more robust. So I think we're never going to be fully ready, because you can always add more things. But we're now in a very different place compared to where we were 3-4 years ago, when we had to build all those things. So it was mostly about trying to pitch an idea that creators felt passionate about as gamers, and then, okay, this is cool. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be a commercial success, but you know what? Let's give it a try and see where it takes us.
All right. And then maybe now shifting more to the creator side and more your story, Matt. So Tracker Network, you guys focus on the stats side of games, working on games like Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant, Apex. And as far as I know, you guys track 100 million players and have over 2.5 million registered users. So, fantastic traction there. But can you tell us more about your company in terms of like the products and the specific story as far as how you got started in terms of this type of business, and then, just kind of how you're able to expand via using the Overwolf framework?
Sure. So we started with Halo Tracker. So that it was just me back in the day. I was basically, doing the day job, and was using my skills for someone else. And I was kind of losing the passion. So I wanted to kind of work on something that was for me. And so that's where I started Halo Tracker as a hobby. And I built that site out for about 5 years as a hobby. Never really made much money. We had some ads, and we had some, you could donate and stuff, but it was never a focus of the site. And so that was just kind of a hobby thing for me to use my skills on, to practice, learn new technologies and stuff like that. When Destiny came out, Destiny 1 is when I started to devote more time, started devoting, weekends and stuff on that kind of thing. So that's when the site started to really gain traction. With the Halo Tracker, I didn't really know what a successful site looked like. If you had a few users on there, that felt good. So I felt like I was killing it. When I launched the Destiny site, I realized the Halo site was doing nothing. So the Destiny really was a much bigger game, much more things you could do with it, an official API, stuff like that. So it really ballooned my interest in it, and the gratification that you get from users and such. That's when I started to kind of take it more seriously, and to kind of think about how can I do this better. So that was really how I started. And then we got our first, with Destiny, I met someone else who was kind of a competitor, and I liked what he was doing. I saw that he was kind of using the same technology I was. And so I was like, hey, maybe we can work together instead of working against each other, work together and build one bigger thing.
Right.
And so that's a kind of an odd thing for someone to accept, but this guy was really open to it, and he wanted to do it. And so, he's still with me today, and we're still working together. And now that we're kind of an official company and working full time, got employees and such now. So that's kind of humble roots that just kind of grew over time and kind of accidentally fell into this. And now it's definitely still my passion. So, I'll never stop doing this.
Great. And then on your side, in terms of how you initially gained traction, it sounds like Destiny was like the big shift in terms of the success of what you were building. But, what did it just kind of take off organically? Just the fact that you had that product and people were looking for it, or did you market it, or what was the magic behind your product taking off?
Yeah, I think it was, me and the other guy were developers. So we did not have a marketing department. So it was just kind of organically. We were on Reddit and stuff like that. And we were just listening to user feedback. People would post on Reddit, why can't I see this? And we'd reply, coming right up. And, in a few days we'd release that feature. And so it was just a community engagement and kind of organic growth. It wasn't, we didn't do a lot of paid like ads and stuff like that. So, and that's, to this day, that's still kind of the true. We still, thankfully, we have other sites. So we launch a new site, we can kind of piggyback and use some of those engagements to push our new sites. But it's still kind of the same marketing thing that we do on our websites, is just the organic growth and trying to connect with the community.
And then in terms of working with Overwolf, do you have any advice for, let's say, other creators trying to build in-game apps using Overwolf, in terms of what should they be focusing on to make sure that they've got a good product that they launch?
Yeah, so I mean, I recommend if you have a good idea, and Overwolf it's going to be a great format for your application, then I would do it for sure. Because one thing that's great about Overwolf is like said earlier, is you can use the web technologies that so you're basically still making like a spa, a web application, but you also can get support from Overwolf, things like ads. Tracker Network, we have on the web, we have our own ads script that we've made and manage, and we've poured hundreds of hours into that thing over many years to improve that, and we've had to learn so much about how ads work. With Overwolf, you can just slap their script in your app, and they're going to review and tell you how to do it, and it's just going to work, and it's going to be well monetized. You're going to make the amount of money that you make per user is going to be also higher, but it's also going to be easier to come by in terms of they're going to manage all of that. So there's things like that. The marketing is something also that they can help with. I find, even for someone like me who's kind of a seasoned developer in this space, I still rely on them a lot for their support on marketing, their ability to contact influencers to market the app, to manage those influencers, make sure that they're actually influencing, stuff like that. There's just a world of things that they can help you do to grow your app while you can sit back and kind of focus on the product and the development, which is where most people have their passion. So my passion is building apps, brainstorming and building. My passion's not marketing. My passion's not doing ads for my app. It's just building apps. So that's one thing that you can get with Overwolf. Whereas if you were to make like a web version of your idea, if it was even possible, you're on your own for all those things. So.
Right. And Uri, could you speak to a little bit more in terms of the marketing? So as far as that on the app side, how are those types of products generally marketed and distributed today? And then what are you guys doing specifically to help market that stuff for creators like Matt?
Sure. So first, I think we have two routes. One is owned media, and the other one is paid. On the owned front, there's App Store placement on our store where people discover content. If the creator, kind of like Matt, has already an existing community, then one of the things they could do is to use empty slots. So slots in which ads are not displayed, either because of ad block or because of lack of fill, to promote their apps. And this is kind of, it's a great go-to-market channel. Another very valuable part in the owned media side is just content recommendation. So for example, if we saw that you just finished playing R6 and Matt has great app for R6, we'll tell you, hey, are you interested in checking out this app? Here's what it does. And that performs and converts really well. On paid, we currently focus on more of the traditional things that you would expect us to do. So we will talk with an influencer that has a lot of reach for a specific game. So if it's R6, Pangu might be a good example from G2. And then we'll do a deal with Pangu that, in essence, he becomes an ambassador for the product. Our request from him is to use it just like you would use Waze if you get into your car and drive it. Use it for its value. And if we see that the influencer is authentically excited about using the product, we know it's going to work, and we'll agree on some sort of a fee and move forward with this campaign. I think that the magic happens when they're really excited about the product. If they're not, and they're just trying to influence something that they don't really care about, it usually does not work. And the advantage is that they can keep on playing the game that they love. Like, when a game wants to get promoted with influencers, they might pay for hours streamed or all that stuff. But in essence, like if I played R6, now I need to switch to a new game if I'm getting paid to promote a new game. And my community, instead of watching R6, is going to watch another game. And this could be great sometimes, but it also has risks for me because what if I'm going to lose audience? And what if I don't like the game? And in Pangu's case, he's great and really passionate about R6. So from that perspective, it's a really good fit. We're also trying to do Google, Facebook, and those kind of things. And we're in, I would say, relatively initial stages of trying to figure out how that scales. But what we would usually do in terms of like the content strategy is use the partnership that we have with these ambassadors to just potentially show footage of them using the app or introducing the app. And through that, I think the app gets nice creatives, cool credibility that comes with the ambassador. And then later on, sometimes good conversion, sometimes bad. It really depends.
So I thought we could kind of shift a little bit the discussion and talk about the kind of exciting recent news in, as far as the Overwolf expansion via the acquisition of CurseForge from Twitch. So Uri, could you talk about that in terms of like, why did this deal happen? How did it happen? And what does it mean for your business now and potentially new opportunities for guys like Matt?
Sure. So we wanted to get into the mod space for some time now. When we've done our pivot and decided to focus on building a framework for app creators, we saw and we built a lot of components that could be used by mod authors as well. And we also think that the market is a little bit broken because if you look at creator economies in general, and again, platforms like YouTube or TikTok, over there, creators can make a living off of their creations. And in modding, this just does not exist. Or if it does, it at super little scale comparing to the engagement. Yeah, I'm not sure if you could pick that up, but I think something like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was a big Kotaku article about the creator of Deadly Boss Mods, which is a super popular add-on for World of Warcraft. And basically how he's devoting his life for creating something that so many people use and love, but that doesn't pay the bills. So the community really helped there, and that was a really nice story. But in essence, it's a result of something that's broken that we wanted to fix. So first and foremost, this is a space that we always wanted to get into. And then secondly, for Twitch, after the Curse acquisition, for a company that is focused on streamers and on things like minutes viewed, I think Curse and particularly the mods business was a bit of a side business with a team that was very passionate about pushing it forward, but wasn't getting enough resources to be able to do that the way they wanted to. And if I was in the shoes of executives at Twitch, I would probably do the same because my core KPI, my North Star, is probably minutes viewed or something along these lines. So as a result, I think they understood that the community wasn't getting the ideal sort of attention, and they were looking for a new home. We had a conversation. I know we participated in this bid with a couple other companies, and luckily we won. So I think this is the context of why on both ends.
Right. And certainly when we look at some of the biggest games in the market today, whether it's League of Legends or Battle Royale and Fortnite, these all have come from mods. Like,
Yep.
But how do you help monetize that more meaningfully today so that a Brendan Green doesn't have to like join a Korean company or go out and like they can just like make their mod, or like, how do you enable that, or how do you enable these guys to actually make a living off of mods rather than having to start some completely new company?
Sure, and you're right. I mean, one of the reasons we're super excited about mods is that it has driven innovation in the industry for so many years. And the way we're thinking about this is with CurseForge, there are a couple of viable business models which we can do. I mean, first it's ads on the website, and then there's an app. So the app has subscriptions and an ad slot. And what we wanted to do is to take 70% of all the revenue this generates and to distribute it pro rata based on engagement to the mod authors. And we think already this could be an interesting first step in allowing them to monetize. We then thought about other business models that could sort of mutually benefit from having authors. So for example, for Minecraft, right? A huge modding community for Minecraft on PC. And also interesting businesses that do server hosting. And sometimes for these servers, they would have mods, and they would just take these mods and install them without really rewarding authors. So there could be a synergy in which we use the reach that we have through CurseForge to promote their services, and in exchange, they would share some of that revenue, and then through us funnel the funds to the mod author. So we would do that like as a service to the mod author, so that if your mods are being used in this and that server company, and they're charging $10 a month from gamers owning these Minecraft servers, we'll funnel some of that revenue to you. And like that, we have a couple other ideas that we want to try out. We can't really sell mods because that would be against terms of service, but we could do donations in an easy way. One of the tricky parts of doing something like a Patreon in modding is that sometimes there are mod packages. So you might have 50 creators that contributed to a single creation, and you're not going to do 50 Patreons. That's too complicated. And then even if you wanted to do that, how do you do that in a way that's fair and that's curated and that is based on actual contribution and actual usage? And this is one of the challenges we want to face. So I think it's going to be a long road of really figuring this out, but this is what we have in mind.
And Matt, for you, are these two separate worlds, or does the CurseForge stuff with Overwolf, is that something that you're viewing as an opportunity?
I've thought about it a little bit, but I haven't really found where Tracker Network is gonna fit in that world over in mods. We've never really engaged with mods before, so TBD, I guess, on that one.
Okay, and then I just have one final question for you guys, which is just kind of looking into the future. If you were to think about upcoming trends or opportunities, like Matt, from your perspective in terms of in-game, are there any specific games or trends or opportunities that you're seeing? And then similar for you, Uri, on your side, what do you think are going to be the big upcoming opportunities for creators on your platform? Maybe starting with you, Matt.
Well, right now, our eyes are all on Valorant. So we're trying to find out, what we're going to be able to do with Valorant. We got an app out there on Overwolf, which is the Riot API is not available yet. So really, Overwolf is the main way to get an app out there right now for Valorant, because they have some events with some data. So we focused heavily on that for the past month, making our app with Overwolf's help on marketing and such. I think we've crossed 100,000 downloads now already, so it's doing very well. I expect both with the API of Riot and with Overwolf, there's going to be a lot more we can do. It's going to be a wild world of opportunity with that game. So we're very excited with that. That's probably the main title right now that we're focused on. We're continuing to try to find more ways to improve, like our Rainbow Six app and stuff like that. I'm not aware of any bigger games coming out right now that we're really massively planning for. So we're excited for a couple of smaller titles. So like I don't know if you saw the Hyperscape game that came out the other day. Got our eyes on that. But we're just always trying to look for good games that that interest us. It's kind of a rule. We only want to do games that we play and that interest us, and just try to find ways to do new things. One of the new things we did recently with Fortnite is the esports world. It's really the first time we're kind of officially hooked into it, where we're showing like esports data from their live in-game events. That's been really exciting because it's something completely new to work on, and it's something that we're bringing to our new Fortnite Overwolf app that we're currently building as well. So we're working on a lot of stuff, and we're excited.
Matt, do you have any thoughts on Tarkov? I noticed that sometimes in terms of like Twitch numbers, it can sometimes pull up into the top 1 or top 2 every once in a while. But in terms of an opportunity from a stats perspective, is that not as high on your radar?
It was, and we certainly tried. It was a game that we were very interested in. But I kind of mentioned earlier, some developers, when you try to hug them, they run. And that was one that we're just not really getting any support out of. So
yeah, those guys are hardcore. Yeah.
I think, companies like Bungie and Riot, even Epic to some degree are, they're not resisting, and they're building a community, and people are building great tools around their games. And so the developers who are not doing that, I just wish that they would kind of see the value, and because, we're excited about their game as well. So.
Got it. Great.
Sure. So first, just follow up on what Matt has mentioned. I think one of the big concerns game developers tend to have is just the lack of control of what the community could create. So then sometimes they would just prefer to say, hey, we prefer not to engage. And, even after the CurseForge announcement, I'd had a conversation with some of the folks at Activision Blizzard, and from their perspective, they're actually very happy to have us as a third party curating content that's being created around their games. And the way we work with game developers and game publishers is very transparent. We always follow their policies, always follow their terms, and then we do the police work for them around the content curation. We also whitelist creators on our platform, so you can't just download and start developing and then distributing your product. You have to go through a process so that we can approve you. We know who you are. We know we can trust you, and then we curate everything you create. So this is for the, some hug you, some run away part. So I think opportunities. I think my biggest thing is probably going to be modding, because this is the new field we're getting into. We live in a world of creators, and in a creator economy, more and more platforms emerge that allow people to make a living off their passion, or to make a living independently. And I think the modding space has existed for so long, and nobody had taken care of it. And I think the opportunity is really, hey, if you're passionate about a game that is moddable, come join us in this journey, and let's make it happen. Because right now we're at a point where we're extremely open to feedback. We're prioritizing everything. We're getting our roadmap figured out for the next 3 years. It's not that it's going to be fixed, but the opportunity is really to participate in this design process and change the future for mod authors, so it becomes a legitimate profession, just like a YouTuber is or a streamer is.
All right, great. Well, I think that's basically all the questions that we have. So do you have any final message for the audience, either Uri or Matt? Or maybe I can also include in the show notes links to your respective products and services. But if you do have any final message, feel free.
You can find us at tracker.gg. We'll be out there. We got popular apps for Overwolf all over the place, Rainbow Six, Apex, Valorant. And we just hope that there will be more opportunities in the future to make these kinds of games. So if you're a game developer out there, we'd love to, make great apps, websites for your game in a way that you're comfortable with. We have worked in the past with some developers. So it kind of, there's this kind of a spectrum of some want to be really in communication with us and, overviewing what we do. Some don't. They just they don't care. So, whatever fits your style, we're happy to work with you, and we just want to make fun, brand safe tools for people who play your game so that they can engage not only in game, but maybe when they put it away and they're right on the subway, that they can, still be engaging in some way with your game.
Yeah, I mean, what Matt said, if you're a game developer and you're interested to embrace creator community around your game in a way that's safe and controlled and that adds value to your community, that's chat.
Sounds good. Okay, well, that's it. That'll do it. Thank you very much for your time, guys. It's great to find out more about in-game apps and mods, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.